The sound of the wood screaming was the first warning. It was not loud, not dramatic, but deep and wrong. A low groan of white oak under stress, the kind of sound that settles in your teeth and tells you something is about to fail. I shut off my truck engine and sat there for a second, listening. The forest around me was quiet and heavy, rain waiting in the air. That sound stayed with me like it was daring me to leave. Ahead of me stood the barn, or what was left of it, half fixed, half falling apart. The ridge beams sagged just enough to be dangerous. Posts leaned like tired men who had given up trying to stand straight. This was not a job I came to take. I came to say no. I stepped out into the mud with my lukewarm coffee and took it all in. A fence line ran along the drive, new posts mixed with old ones, some already leaning. A stack of rough boards sat near the gate, plastic wrap torn open by the wind. Whoever ordered that lumber was already losing money. A small terrier barked once, then stopped when it realized I was not impressed. The barn doors slid open, and she walked out. She moved like she belonged there. Denim overalls, white tank top, a faded blue cap pulled low, dark hair tied back in a ponytail. There was dirt on her cheek she had not bothered to wipe off. She looked strong, grounded, not at all like the careless property flippers I expected. "You the timber guy?" she asked. "I'm Jude," I said, leaning against my truck, "and that ridge beam is going to snap in 48 hours. She did not panic. She looked up at the beam, took a breath, and sighed like the weight of the place was already familiar. 48 hours, she repeated. Great. The bank inspection is in 72. Then you fail, I said. Gravity does not care about plans. She stepped closer, eyes steady. I believe in paying for good work. Marco says you're the best. I hated that Marco talked too much. Before I could answer, the wind picked up and the wood groaned again. Not dramatic. Real. A structure asking for help. I can fix it, I said, grabbing my tool belt. But it won't be cheap, and you stay out of my way. She smiled, small but sharp. Deal. Quote, Marco arrived a minute later in his usual loud way, talking like nothing worried him. He brought the steel plates, the LVLs, and the chains I asked for. Before he left, he leaned close and muttered, Try not to fall for her, you'll hate it. I ignored him. Inside the barn was worse than I thought. Bad joints, wrong nails, wood-fighting metal that never belonged there. I paced, measured, and cursed quietly while she worked on the far side, sanding floors with steady hands. She did not hover. She did not pretend. She worked. By noon, I had a plan. Temporary supports first, slow lifts, no guessing. When I started lifting the ridge, the barn groaned again, then slowly went quiet. The silence afterward felt personal. She let out a breath she had been holding. That was impressive. That was step one, I said. She brought lunch without asking. It was better than mine, which annoyed me. We ate in silence until she asked, calm and curious, Why do you look so angry all the time? I'm not angry, I said. I'm efficient. She smiled like she did not believe me. Later, when she tried to lift a heavy cement bag alone, I took it from her without asking and carried it where it needed to go. She did not argue, she just said thank you, quietly. That night, I went home to a clean, empty house that felt bigger than it ever had. The next morning, she was setting fence posts wrong. I showed her the right way without judging. She listened. That mattered more than praise. 3 days later, the town inspector showed up. He smelled trouble. He smelled control. When he threatened to shut us down, I stepped in front of her without thinking. I did not yell. I spoke calmly. He backed off, but I knew he would return. 2 weeks passed in long days and short nights. We worked in rhythm. Coffee appeared the way I liked it without me asking. I added reinforcements she did not know she needed. She noticed anyway. The night we set the new ridge beam, the rain came down hard. The work was dangerous. One slip could end everything. We moved inch by inch, slow and careful, until the beam finally locked into place. She leaned against a post, breathing hard, eyes bright. "You seem like a good man," she said. "You married?" "No," I replied, voice rough. "I'm still waiting for her." She blinked. "Waiting for who?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "The one who doesn't make me feel tired." The air changed. I turned away before my hands betrayed me. "We should call it a night." She agreed, but her voice sounded different. 2 days before the final inspection, I arrived early and found her standing still in the middle of the barn, holding a letter. Her face told me everything before I read it. Construction halted. Effective immediately. And just like that, everything we built was one signature away from being taken from her. I looked at the paper, then at her, and realized this was no longer just about wood. She sat down hard on the concrete floor like her legs had given up before her mind did. Not crying, not shaking, just empty, like someone had pulled the power from the room. I stood there holding the cease and desist order, reading it again even though I already knew what it said. Environmental hazard, soil contamination, immediate stop work, pending testing, 6 weeks minimum. The bank deadline was Friday. "This is Warren," I said. My voice stayed flat, but something cold settled in my chest. "He's lying." "It doesn't matter," she said quietly. "The paper is real. If we touch anything, they shut us down. If we shut down, the bank forecloses." She hugged her knees and stared at the dirt-stained floor like it was the only solid thing left in her world. I had seen buildings fail before. I had seen people give up too. This looked like the second one. "Get up," I said. She shook her head. "Jude, it's over." I stepped closer and held my hand out. "Get up." She looked at my hand like it was something she didn't deserve to take. I did not move it. After a long second, she grabbed on, and I pulled her to her feet. I did not let go. "We're not building today," I said. "We're going to the county office. It's closed." "Then we go to whoever opens it," I said. "Bring the deed." She looked at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I remembered something. This barn was older than zoning maps. Older than Warren. Old enough to matter. We spent 6 hours fighting with paper instead of wood. Clerks tried to stall us. One said the historical designation could not be found. I slid my phone across the counter with the registry entry highlighted. Another tried to say Warren had authority. I showed the policy that said he did not. Carmen did not shrink. She stood straighter with every document that hit the counter. By late afternoon, we walked out with a signed waiver that lifted the stop work order. Carmen stood in the parking lot holding the paper like it might disappear. "We did it," she whispered. "You did," I said. "I just read the rules." She laughed, bright and sharp, then looked up at the sky. Dark clouds were already gathering. "We have 1 day left," she said. "And a storm coming," I replied. That night, the storm did not ask permission. Wind slammed into the valley hard enough to bend trees. Power went out halfway through my dinner. I thought about the barn, the open vents, the unfinished flashing. If the wind got under the roof, it could rip everything apart. I grabbed my keys. When I pulled up, her truck was already there. Inside the barn, the tarp snapped like it was alive. Carmen was halfway up a ladder, trying to nail it down while the wind fought her. It was reckless. It was brave. It was her. "Carmen," I yelled, but the wind swallowed my voice. Her boots slipped. For one long second, she hung there by one hand. My body moved before my thoughts. I took the ladder 2 rungs at a time and caught her around the waist, locking her against me like a brace. "Get down," I said into her ear. "Calm. Firm." "I have to seal it," she shouted back. "It's too dangerous," I said. I turned my shoulder into the wind and guided her down 1 rung at a time. When we hit the floor, I took the impact and kept her off the concrete. The barn groaned, but it held. She shook in my arms, finally letting herself feel the fear she had been carrying for weeks. I wrapped my arms around her without thinking, shielding her like the barn had shielded us. "It's going to fail," she whispered. "No," I said, looking up at the ridge beam. "It's not." "How do you know?" Quote. "Because I built it," I said, then quieter, "and I built it for you." She pulled back just enough to look at me. The storm roared outside, but inside everything went still. "Don't say that unless you mean it," she said. "I don't waste words," I replied, her hand fisted in my shirt. That was all the answer I needed. I lifted my hand and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. She leaned into my touch like she had been waiting. "I'm not waiting anymore," I said. She nodded once, then kissed me. It was not soft. It was not careful. It was honest. When we broke apart, we stayed close, breathing the same air, listening to the storm fail to tear the barn down. Morning came clean and cold. The roof was intact. The beam held. We stood side by side, quiet and exhausted, watching the light settle into the space we saved. At 8 sharp, Warren arrived for the final inspection. He walked the barn slow, tapping walls, checking railings, hunting for something to kill the project. Carmen stood by the door, hands clenched. I stood beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. Finally, he stopped in the center of the room, looked up at the timbers, and sighed. "Pass," he muttered, slapping the permit sticker on the wall. Carmen laughed out loud and threw her arms around my neck. I laughed too, surprised by how natural it felt. As Warren laughed, she held my hand and said, steady and clear, "This is Jude, my partner on this build." He did not argue. The barn was hers. The fight was over. But the real question between us had just begun. After Warren drove away, the barn felt different. Not quieter. Safer. Like it finally trusted us. Carmen stood in the middle of the floor staring at the permit sticker, like it might vanish if she blinked too hard. I watched her without saying anything, noticing how her shoulders finally dropped, how the fight drained out of her posture. "It's real," she said softly. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me it's a mistake." "No one's coming," I said. "It's yours." She turned to me, eyes bright but tired. "You stayed." "I don't start things I don't finish," I said. That earned me a small smile. Not the sharp one she used when negotiating. Something warmer. Something personal. The next few days were strange in a good way. The pressure was gone, but the work wasn't. We shifted from survival mode to building something that would last. Trim work, railings, details people would touch without thinking. Carmen started asking questions, not because she doubted me, but because she wanted to understand. I showed her how to read grain, how to listen for stress, how to feel when something was right. One afternoon, while we were installing the last section of railing, she said, "You ever think about staying?" I kept my eyes on the level. "I don't make plans while I'm holding tools." She laughed. "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest one I have," I said. She nodded, like she respected that. That night she invited me to stay for dinner. Not takeout, real food. We ate at a makeshift table made from sawhorses and plywood. The terrier slept between our feet. The barn lights cast long shadows, and for the first time, the place felt finished. "You live alone," she said, not as a question. "Yes." "Always?" I took a breath. "Not always. Long time, though." She did not push. She just listened, which somehow made it harder. After dinner, we walked the property line together, checking the fence posts she had set the right way this time. The air was cool, quiet. She stopped near the gate and looked at me like she was deciding something important. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have walked away. You almost did." "I almost always do," I said. This time, I didn't. She reached for my hand, slow, giving me time to pull back. I didn't. Her hand fit like it had always known where to go. I don't want this to be a mistake, she said. Neither do I replied. So we don't rush it. She smiled, relieved. Okay. We stood there longer than necessary, hands linked, watching the light fade. No promises, no pressure. Just a quiet agreement. Over the next week, people started coming by. Vendors, neighbors, curious locals. Carmen handled them with confidence, introducing me as her partner without hesitation. Each time she said it, something settled deeper in my chest. One evening, after everyone left, she found me locking up my truck. Stay tonight, she said. It wasn't an invitation wrapped in flirtation. It was simple, honest. I stayed. We didn't rush into anything. We talked. About her dad. About why the barn mattered. About my work, my silence. The years I spent choosing stability over closeness. When she finally rested her head on my shoulder, it felt earned. The next morning, we woke early and worked side by side like nothing had changed. But everything had. A week later, the bank paperwork came through. The venue was officially funded. Carmen cried that time, for real, and I held her without fixing anything. I couldn't have done this without you, she said. You did, I replied. I just stood next to you. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, I don't want you standing next to me anymore. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a demotion. She smiled. I want you with me, not as the guy who helped, as the man who stays. The words landed heavy and careful. I did not answer right away. I looked around the barn, at the joints, the lines, the work that would outlast both of us. I don't move fast, I said. I know, she replied. That's why I'm asking now. I took her hands, rough and steady like mine. I'm still waiting, I said. She squeezed my hands. For what? For the moment that feels right, I said. And this one does. She leaned in and kissed me, softer this time, slower, like something that planned to stay. But life rarely lets you settle without one last test. 2 days later, Carmen got a call that made her go pale. She stood there with the phone still in her hand, not saying anything. I knew that look by now. It was the look she wore when something mattered too much to panic about. What is it? I asked. She swallowed. The buyer backed out of the first wedding booking. I waited. One problem rarely travels alone. They said they love the venue, she continued, but they're nervous. New business, rural location, they want reassurance. I nodded once. That's fair. She exhaled slowly. They want to meet the owner and the builder. I almost smiled. They arrived that afternoon, a young couple, nervous, hopeful, the kind of people who looked at a place and tried to imagine their futures standing in it. Carmen gave them the tour. I stayed quiet, letting the barn speak for itself. At the end, the groom asked me, "You build all this?" Quote. "Yes," I said. "Would you trust it?" he asked. "With your own wedding?" I did not look at Carmen. I did not hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I built it to last." The bride smiled. The groom nodded. They shook hands with Carmen and signed the contract on the hood of their car like they couldn't wait another second. When they drove away, Carmen stood still for a moment. Then she laughed and cried at the same time, covering her face with both hands. "It's really happening," she said. I pulled her hands down and kissed her forehead. "Told you." Spring came faster than either of us expected. The barn filled with flowers, music, laughter. People danced on floors we reinforced. They leaned on railings we set true. They never thought about the work. That meant we did it right. Somewhere between the third wedding and the fifth, people stopped asking if I worked for her. They just assumed. One evening after the last guest left, Carmen locked the doors and leaned back against them. She looked tired, happy, real. "You still waiting?" she asked softly. I crossed the room and stood in front of her. I took her hands the same way I had on the worst day, when everything was about to fall apart. "No," I said. "I was waiting for this." She smiled, slow and sure, and rested her forehead against my chest. Later that night, we sat on the steps outside the barn, watching fireflies rise out of the grass. She leaned into my side like it was where she belonged. And maybe it was. Maybe we both were. Some people rebuild things to forget the past. Some rebuild to prove something. We rebuilt because we believed something was worth saving. Resilience is not loud. It is quiet work done right. It is staying when leaving would be easier. It is choosing one person and building something honest with them, beam by beam. And sometimes it starts with one simple question that changes everything.